Democrats are attempting to pressure the Supreme Court to block a tax on the super wealthy, according to court filings reviewed by The Lever. The former Supreme Court lawyer for the Obama administration, Neal, submitted an amicus brief in the Supreme Court case Moore v. United States on behalf of the group Saving America's Family Enterprises, a group that has reportedly led campaigns against Democrats' efforts to tax the wealth of, quote, millionaires and billionaires. Former Louisiana Senator John Breaux turned lobbyist who lobbies for ExxonMobil, Norfolk Southern, the derailed train in East Palestine, and Boeing is listed on the amicus brief.
According to The Lever, SAFE is, quote, organized as a so-called social welfare nonprofit, which allows it to hide the identity of its donors and avoid taxes while spending money to influence policy decisions. Now, in March of this year, Breaux was brought in to serve as a senior advisor for SAFE. Reporter for Lever News, Julia Rock, joins us now to discuss. Hello, Julia.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, I mean, that's a strong claim, pressuring the Supreme Court to rule one way or not. It's just, they just wrote a amicus brief. Don't lots of people do that?
Lots of people do write amicus briefs, and that is one of the main ways groups pressure the Supreme Court to rule one way or another. It's really common for justices to cite arguments made in amicus briefs in their decisions, and a lot of the groups filing amicus briefs are funded by the same people who have run these multi-million-dollar campaigns to get justices appointed to the court. So is pressure the right word? In my opinion, yes. This is how these groups pressure the court.
I mean, I think one of the most surprising things about this story is that this is pressure that is coming from Democrat-aligned groups. And it contrasts with the image the Democrats often try to sell of themselves as aligned with the interests of the working class. Obviously, you had people who were either caucusing with Democrats or Democrats themselves, like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, being the chief champions of wealth taxes in the past. What do you make of a former Obama lawyer being the one who's leading the charge on this effort to preempt a policy which is very popular publicly, which is to tax millionaires and billionaires at a higher rate?
I think there are two things I take away from this. I mean, first of all, there have been some tensions between Obama world folks and Biden world folks, at least in the most sort of optimistic view of the Biden administration, that, it's taken these really, or not really, but in some senses progressive turns from what Obama did. So it gives us some sense of the fact that there are still these tensions between people who were in the Obama administration, many of whom are now, of course, serving in the Biden administration. And of course, things like Biden's wealth tax proposal or student debt cancellation proposal. I think the other thing to make of the fact that this is an effort being led by former New Democrats, Obama world people, is that the party has not coalesced in any unified way around a wealth tax. And this is sort of a reminder of it. We haven't really been confronted with that fact because wealth tax legislative proposals and Biden's proposals haven't made it very far. But this is just sort of a reminder that it's not like, right now we have a Democratic party ready to tax millionaires and billionaires in a substantial way.
Indeed. I mean, it almost feels as though, given the disinterest from most corporate Democrats, which is most Democrats, in something like a wealth tax, as contrasted with the significant public interest in a wealth tax. There was a Pew Research poll that showed 61% of Americans favored raising tax rates for households that made more than $400,000 a year. Another poll showed that 74% of Americans support raising taxes on the wealthy. If you are a Democratic Party that, frankly, because of your corporate buy-in, doesn't want to actually tax your donors more, knowing that the public very much wants you to do that, having the Supreme Court preemptively tell you that you can't seems like a good out. Is that overly cynical from my perspective?
I don't know any better than you do, but it seems like a very fair characterization of the situation. The other thing to think about is that we're at a moment where, of course, the way many millionaires and billionaires have and make their money is through wealth, not, through their annual income. And as we're seeing skyrocketing inequality, if the Supreme Court rules, the way that SAFE and these other groups weighing in want them to, preempting a wealth tax, it's going to close off a whole range of possibilities that the government has to tackle these increasing levels of inequality, the billionaires who were created by the COVID crisis. So things are really coming to a head on this, I think. And exactly, getting a conservative Supreme Court, to make this ruling so Democrats don't have to, could be helpful for them.
I mean, I'm sure there are progressive groups submitting amicus briefs, pressuring the Supreme Court, as it were, to interpret the law somewhat differently?
It's a good point. So actually not yet, because only briefs have been submitted either in favor of the more petitioners, the people who are trying to get the court to preempt the wealth tax. The government has not filed their brief responding yet. And at that point, surely progressive groups will weigh in and say, no, rule the other way. But it's just a timing thing. It hasn't happened yet.
Well, the other aspect of this is that it seems very, anti-democratic. For years, Republicans invade against kind of activist judges and the idea that policy should be made at the Supreme Court level. And while certainly anybody who's in favor of a wealth tax is going to have the uphill climb of getting it through Congress, a Congress filled with millionaires and billionaires who have personal interests that very much align against such a policy, that, again, a policy that is very popular among their constituents. That is a legislative battle to be had. That is a democratic battle to be had. Preempting it by going to the Supreme Court directly does feel like it has a different kind of flavor, and a flavor which Republicans of yesteryear used to be very critical of. Am I wrong?
No, you're making a great point that we haven't gotten into yet, which is that this isn't even a case about a wealth tax. It's about a corporate income tax that was included in the Republicans' 2017 tax cut bill. It was one of the few revenue-raising provisions in that bill. But there's sort of a particular technical taxation issue that groups are grabbing onto in the hope of getting a sort of broader ruling on this issue that not only would strike down this 2017 corporate tax, but also preempt a wealth tax. So you're sort of characterizing it correctly. What we have here is a situation where groups are seeing an opportunity to use the power of the court to do something that is not very popular among the public, even if maybe it doesn't have a great chance in Congress right now, to sort of get this ruling preempting this from happening in the first place.
Tell us more. What do we know about this Neal Katyal individual?
Well, anybody who's been watching coverage of Trump and the trial and the impeachment has seen him on MSNBC probably quite frequently. He was the Solicitor General. He was the acting Solicitor General in the Obama administration. So he only served actually for a year, but often sort of his Obama credentials are touted when he appears on MSNBC. In, I think it was 2020, he was really making headlines because he defended Nestle and Cargill before the Supreme Court against being held liable for child slavery lawsuits. But he has been before the court numerous times. He's a lawyer before the court very frequently, not so frequently filing amicus briefs, but he's really become sort of an MSNBC stalwart during the as part of the sort of Trump resistance.
From defending child slavery to preempting a tax on millionaire and billionaire wealth is quite the record he's getting for himself here. Before we close out, Julia, can you help us understand what the supposed constitutional argument is for barring these kinds of taxes on corporate wealth and implicitly other kinds of millionaire and billionaire extreme wealth?
Yes. So the Constitution gives Congress the power to tax income. That is something that has been, the definition of income is something that has been tested, not numerous times, but a few times in Supreme Court cases, especially in the early 1900s. So the particular issue in this case is whether income has to be realized in order for it to be taxable. So if you own a house, say, and it increases in value, but you haven't sold the house, can Congress tax you on the increased value of that asset before you've sold it? That is sort of the big picture issue. Progressive groups will weigh in soon, or other types of groups arguing no, income does not have to be realized to be taxable under the 16th Amendment. But that is sort of the particular technical issue here that comes up in the 2017 tax they're fighting, but is also going to be the big issue in the constitutionality of a wealth tax.
Viewers, let us know what you think about that kind of tax becoming realized. Julia Rock, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.